then you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like now you know in your heart, rather than just saying, oh, I'm sorry, but you don't really know what that's like. So don't worry about the not having the happiness right now. Sunny, you were going to say something from the past week?
Yeah. What I noticed was that, with difficult people, or with people I have find difficulty with, that there's like a point before they do, there's a point after they do something that annoys me, before I, before I react to them, I feel something, I feel the anger, or I feel the upsetness, or I feel the jealousy kind of come up, so that, and it's different from what I feel about them. So I'm trying to, work with that, as you know so yeah, so I'm trying to work with that.
Good. That sounds great. Thank you. Yeah.
I had an incident too where somebody was really angry. They really were angry, and it was a very minor incident, and it was towards me. And so I picked that to be my meditation, to give love and to get back. And what I realized was, by the end of the meditation, I had so much compassion for them, because I realized how their delusions created this anger that was so out of proportion. And so I switched from being like really like standoffish to being compassionate, knowing that they're operating out of a place that was just even worse than what I was receiving.
Right. Very powerful. And when you get to a further place with lojong, that's great, Maureen. When you get to a further place, what happens is when somebody's really angry at us like that, whether it's warranted or not, right? But suddenly you start thinking like, did I contribute to this in any way at all? Like I need to just totally tone down anything that's riling them, because I care about their mind. Like it's not about me, and that they're, it's more about, wow, they're creating such a negative karma by being so angry. Like I really need to tone down any response, any look or gesture that they're interpreting, that they have a possibility to interpret, because you start thinking about their mind like that. So that's even another little fine tuning of that. When somebody is directing that kind of stuff at you, it's hard, as long as you're safe, as long as you're basically physically and mentally and emotionally safe. But it's also when, me trying to change my behavior, because for some karmic reason, I'm creating anger in this person. It's not me really doing it, but I'm the trigger, I'm the condition, the rising condition. And I really need to, sometimes you just need to slowly walk away. That also will subdue but thinking more about their mind, then it's uncomfortable for me, like that. Okay, so we were just talking a little review, and last week, because we've been spending a fair amount of time on this, developing the attitude from this lojong text of being happy that sufferings arise. We were just finishing that section, and we're going to be going on like that. So what I'd like to do, now that I think most of us are here, welcome again, and thank you so much for joining. We've got this session and the next session, is to settle that motivation again. Consider your motivation for why we're here this evening, or whatever time it is where you are, afternoon, and think about why you're showing up now. You may have set a motivation in the morning or at some point in the day, and let's rekindle that, and thinking about how wonderful to transform our mind into something glorious by subduing the unbalanced states, the delusion. And the reason we're doing it is that helps us move along a path to becoming Buddhas. And as Buddhas, we're not only fully omniscient, all-knowing, and free of all fears, okay, but we have a fully realized mind state, highest level mind state that is merged with manifestations of loving kindness, wisdom, compassion. And from that space, the utter spaciousness of the blissful mind and the fully compassionate mind, we want to benefit all living beings. So take a moment, and if you want to align yourself with that Mahayana motivation, just take a moment to set your motivation for our time together and all the activities of the rest of your day. And so really, for the purpose of benefiting all living beings, we'll get together tonight, talk more about lojong and the death process. So I want to go a little bit more with the text. So if you have something, it's probably better for me tonight if you can raise your hand and say it. I'm not going to look too much in the chat because it's a little bit distracting for me. There's one in the chat right now, and I'll just take this. I've heard that the death process is not at all. I'm not sure what that next word is.
I'll talk.
And near death, there are many nightmare visions. Can I talk about that?
And how you lose your aggregates all dissolve, and then it's really a horrible experience, and you lose all the aggregates, and you have to, I guess, be prepared for that.
Yes, yes. We are going to talk about that. We are going to talk about that.
Okay.
And probably the next class, I'm going to go through some more practical things that happen. And what we're tonight, I wanted to do the meditation on. We don't have so much time to do all the death meditations, but I wanted to just familiarize you for a moment in a meditation. We're going to do this a little bit later, of the visions that appear, as you're dying, as you're actively dying, and when you've actually stopped breathing, where they go from gross to subtle, as the gross winds and mind are dissolving into the subtle consciousness before the consciousness leaves the body. So we're going to do those death absorptions tonight, which I think is related to what you're talking about, Bob. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so let me go on a little bit more with this text, the lojong text. And now here's an interesting point is, and a lot of this is based in, there's one section, and this is on the bottom of page 3. In the period of withdrawal from meditation, and we were talking last week about, you first train with small sufferings and you get your mind comfortable with those. So when you have bigger sufferings, particularly the death experience, you're gonna feel more comfortable, because Bob, those nightmare visions usually come up when we're not trained and we're not familiar with what's happening. And we have a lot of regrets, and sometimes you have negative visions like that. So in the period where you're withdrawing from meditation, again, you want to remind yourself about your guru, if you have a qualified guru, and the triple gem. Take refuge. Take refuge in the 3 jewels of refuge. Can you at least bring that to mind? Are you familiar enough with Tong Lin at the end to be doing that? It's a huge space of mind when you're dying, is to think like, okay, I'm dying. Anyway, this has to happen at some point. So since I'm dying right now, and whatever pain I'm experiencing or not pain, whatever confusion, could I have some presence of mind and familiarity to imagine all the people that might be really suffering in death right now and really confused in the death process and lost in it? Could I take all of that on in my dying? And because I'm feeling somewhat balanced and peaceful, or it's not, it's going okay, can I offer them that? A peace of mind, calmness. And if you just have that dying thought like that, it's extremely powerful. So these are trainings you can have. Obviously, emptiness is the best training of all. Okay, we're going to get to that in a little bit later. Emptiness is the best training of all. Okay, but the thing is, taking refuge in the 3 jewels, in the guru and the triple gem, thinking of Tonglen, thinking of emptiness, you're not going to be doing it unless you're familiar in life right now with them, meaning you're doing meditation on those now. You've studied them already. to have them to thoroughly have an understanding. Okay, and that you're doing regular meditation. So that's what comes up. One thing that really impressed me once, a friend of mine was dying at the hospice at Land of Medicine Buddha in California. There's a 1-bed hospice called Tara Home or Tara Hospice. And she was the first patient there that died, and she became a nun at the end of her life. So she was dying, and we were doing these vigils with her, people coming in, doing prayers and different experiences as she was kind of fading away. And at one point, right after her breathing stopped, a friend of mine was there with her, another nun that was at Land of Medicine Buddha. And Rinpoche, apparently, she called Rinpoche to say she stopped breathing. And then Rinpoche said, yell loudly in her ear to take refuge. Like he said, right now, this is the most important time, yell loudly in her ear, because the hearing is often the last thing to go. So I was coming up the steps of the hospice because I knew she was close to death, and we were taking turns doing these prayer sessions. And I hear my friend yelling, like really loudly. I could hear it coming out of the window, refuge prayers. And take refuge, saying her name, like take refuge in, in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, like, and it was a little bit alarming. And then I realized when I came in what had happened, and she said, and then later she said, Rinpoche told me to scream in her ear so that she could hear, to remind her in case you get lost in that, as the subtle consciousness is dissolving and you go into an intermediate state, the bardo, which just simply means in Sanskrit, in between. You're in between two lives, this life and the next life. So again, that's a wonderful thing people can do if you're surrounded by Dharma friends and they know your practices and they know what your guru is telling you to do, and reminders about emptiness, reminder about your guru, things like that. And I do remember, and this was even more poignant, was a Buddhist student on death row. Now, this is not normal that you have a Buddhist student on death row, but there's people in prison that become Buddhists and they start practicing and meditating and they see the benefit. So this man was actually executed and by the state. And the last thing he asked them, could you, while he was strapped to the gurney, right before they injected the drugs, could you show me a picture of he had a picture of the Dalai Lama. Can you just put that close to my face? And they did. They showed that to him above his face. And he looked at it, for like a minute, and he closed his eyes. And that was the last thing he wanted to remember. So there are things of reminders when it's possible that we try to do for each other. And you can leave that in your Dharma will of what you want. Be very specific if you want to be like that. So again, you want to take refuge. You want to be familiar with that. So something to think about right now in your life in the preparation. And then here's another thing. When you're training in lojong, when you're training and getting ready for death, it is helpful in general, as you know, as Dharma practitioners, to keep entertainment at a distance. Okay, in the midst of entertainment, it says in the text, and this is on page 4, you may be influenced by many bad friends who say, how can you bear suffering and contempt? Okay, from many worries caused by enemies, relatives, and wealth, your mind gets polluted and disturbed beyond control. And as a result, you develop bad habits. This is what the text says. In addition, the mind may be diverted by various incidental circumstances. Okay. In solitary places, these distractions are not present. There, the mind is clear, so it's easy to concentrate. So this is also about our practice in general, and this is certainly about a preparation for the death time, like that. So think about it. Occasionally, absolutely, we need breaks. We are human beings. We need breaks. You want to watch a movie, you want to read a book. Okay, but how often are you doing it, and what kind of imprint is it leaving? So what kinds of books are you reading? What kinds of TV do you watch, movies, news? What are you looking at on social media and on your phone? And how disturbing is it? How violent is it? Or full of images of desire and things like that? When I'm dying, do I do I want the silence of the lambs coming up in my mind? What I want to be thinking about, right? So you can, just think about it. What do I have more of an influence in my mind? Is it my guru? Is that the first thing that's there? So obviously the weight of the more I'm spending time doing that. And then it goes on to say, Chud practitioners, they do a very distinct meditation called Chud, CHOD. And at first they avoid directing the practice to the harm caused, it says, by men in place of distraction. And they're often calling up gods and demons as if they're in solitary cemeteries and other wild places to work at a level to control the mind, okay, if that's what might appear at the death time. So they're comfortable and realizing, because with Chud, you're working a lot with emptiness. With emptiness, you bring up the fear because that brings up the I, the sense of yourself, the very strong concrete notion of myself, the feeling of myself, okay, that keeps me mired in suffering. And when I can call that up by the fear, okay, then I can really do a proper emptiness meditation when I'm very clear about that object of negation, which is the first part of the 4-point analysis of an effective way to meditate on emptiness. And I remember years ago, I was at Laudo in Nepal, the retreat place. Rinpoche's sister lives there. She's a nun now. I think she's close to 80, she told me. I was on the phone with her not long ago. A face call you can do now, a WhatsApp chat at Laudo. There's enough Wi-Fi or whatever, I couldn't believe. So I could get her on a face call. And years ago, she was telling me she had studied a little bit at a big monastery called Karma Chuling that is below the valley, below the Everest area of Nepal, a few days walk from below Laudo. So she was studying there with this amazing Lama, Trulshik Rinpoche, who passed away. He's been reincarnated, but one of my gurus, amazing. And she said that they were studying Chud and practicing Chud. And it's a vast mountain, and the monastery is in this valley, and people were positioned in tents separate all over the mountain face there purposely. And she was in a tent, her own solitary tent. And after they got the teachings, they'd go back alone to their tent, and the Lama would come in the middle of the night and beat on the tent like a spirit. And the Sherpas are extremely scared of spirits. So she said she was so terrified. And Sherpas also, they don't sweat the way Westerners do. Like Asians just don't sweat as much as we do, it seems somehow. So she said, she told me, and she has broken English, and she said to me, water. She pointed to her face, gestured to her face, and she said, water coming. So at first I was like, water coming? I said, was it raining? And then I realized she was dripping in sweat from fear. Like she was so terrified that she started, so she was sweating from the fear of how scared she was. And then she said, then we'd meditate on emptiness. She said she was terrified. So again, it can be effective. And when you're meditating on emptiness, those kind of incidents you want to call up in a part of your mind. Or Maureen, you got a great incident of somebody really angry at you, or just feeling tremendous anger arise in yourself. Use that to feel the I, to get the I, because that's the hardest part of the meditation, like that. So again, just going on a little bit more briefly, the text says, not only so that the mind may be unaffected by bad circumstances and sufferings, but also in order to extract bliss from the vicissitudes themselves, you should stop the arising of aversion to internal illness and outer enemies, evil spirits, disharmonious speech. You should accustom yourself to the arising of just the feeling of liking. For this, you should cease to view dangerous circumstances as defects and train yourself with every effort to view them as valuable. So once again, it's about really welcoming the suffering for you to transform your mind. Again, it's very nice how he says it, in order to extract the bliss, it's stop arising aversion to all those negative things we experience. It's very challenging on this planet because You know, just look at the way Americans are. And it's not that we're all Americans here, but any little piece of suffering is just too much for us. It's just too much for us. We just can't bear it. We just can't bear it. You know, I just had an interesting experience. I was just grocery shopping just before the class. And I went into the standard supermarket near me. And each time I went to find an item, I either couldn't find it where I thought it would be, or it was out, it was empty. Like 4 different items I was trying to find. It wasn't anything unusual, the item. You know, one of them was like almond milk, you know, how there's a lot of almond milk in this grocery store, but not gone, you know, it was all emptied. Each time I went, and each time there was a salesperson near there. Now, normally in this grocery store, I can't find a salesperson, a person from the store, but I'd find a different salesperson and I'd say, excuse me, is there any more of blah, 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 you know, this item? You know, and I was kind of happy, you know, and they'd say, oh, let me check. Like often they'll say, no, we don't have any more. But I was in some kind of transported space and they'd said, each of them very pleasantly said, well, let me check in the back. And then they'd come out with the item or they'd take me right to it. It's right though, here it is, you know, thank you. Great. You know, oh, here's the last one, they'd find me. Like it was, so I ended up meeting 4 really nice people in the store. And they were so nice. Everything was, and suddenly the whole place was like transformed. I was just like, and I walked out and I thought, that was so pleasant. Like, so again, you can come in with an attitude like they don't have my stuff, you know, and you can kind of go down this. And I was standing next to a woman, a customer, when I went, oh, so, you know, and I must have said out loud, oh, so there, I don't see any more of the whatever. And then she was like, well, they never have stuff. They're never stocked. She, you know, she was in that space. And I kind of just looked at her and I was like, okay, you know, like, you know, I don't find that they never have stuff, but sometimes that store does have issues with stocking. But I was just like, all right, well, I'm here, you know, I'll figure it out. It's nothing urgent, you know, if I didn't get the cheese that day or whatever. And then, but if you keep the attitude open, you know, and obviously not finding some almond milk at the store is hardly a suffering, let me tell you, hardly suffering, barely. But basically, if you just keep that open attitude, whatever difficulty's coming, I'm welcoming it. And then as a result, I meet all these great people. They're smiling at me. I'm smiling at them. I can't see them smiling. We've got masks on, but you feel the thank you. And I could say, thank you so much. Like they know they helped me. So they're happy. You know, I could see the crinkles around their eyes. They were happy. I'm happy. I walked out and it was just like, great, you know. What, you know, I was like, what a wonderful store. You know, it was just like, what a wonderful experience. So again, it's just that attitude, just training our mind. It's so powerful, the lojong stuff. And it was funny for me because I walked out of the store and because I, you know, had done this recent retreat and I was spending a lot of time with bodhicitta on the retreat and some other things, but I was really having a little bit more focus than normal on bodhicitta. And I walked out and I said to myself, like not out loud, but I was thinking in my mind, I thought, this bodhicitta stuff really works. You know, it was funny. It's like, it really does have an effect on the mind like that. So, and retreat certainly does. Okay. So whether things are pleasing, going on with the text, whether things are pleasing or not, depends upon how they're perceived by the mind, right? There you go. So again, for example, it says if a person persistently perceives the faults in worldly enjoyments, then even if his retinue and wealth increase, he'll feel all the more sick of them. Whereas if a person perceives worldly enjoyments as beneficial, he'll aspire to increase his prosperity. So again, everything's about, you know, how the mind, just the attitude again. And so again, because of this lojong training, think about this, the mind will become flexible. The mind will have breath. It will have this spaciousness, okay? You shall be easy to be with and courageous, right? You will be free from obstacles to your spiritual practice. All bad circumstances will arise as noble and fortunate. The mind will always be satisfied by the bliss of peace. Think of those things. Again, and it goes on to say to practice. This is now in what they say, the dark era. I don't really like dark, but I would say, degenerate era. That's now. That's the time period we are in. Okay. You must not be without armor of this kind. Think about it. Because Bob, from what you were asking about the death thing, the terrifying visions, if you're practicing like this, whatever comes, you're going to be comfortable with it. Whatever comes, again, all bad circumstances will arise as noble and fortunate. That's where your mind's going to be. That's what we want to train with. That's the armor we need going into the death experience. But that's the armor we need in everyday life. Okay. And when you're not afflicted by the suffering of anxiety, not only will other sufferings disappear, like weapons dropping from the hands of soldiers, but even illnesses will automatically disappear. And then it says, the holy ones of the past said, by not having an unhappy mind, by not being discontent about anything, your mind will not be disturbed. With your mind not disturbed, your wind energies are not disturbed, in which case other elements of the body are not disturbed. Because of this, your mind is not disturbed. And I'll add, on a gross level, on a subtle level. So the wheel of happiness will revolve. And then one last quotation here. As birds find it easy to harm horses and donkeys with sores on their backs, evil spirits will easily get a chance to harm those whose nature is fearful, but it will be difficult to harm those whose nature is stable. So it's something to really chew on. And what I'd like to do right now is let's do this meditation on the death absorptions. Again, to familiarize our mind. And let me explain, these absorptions are normally done in highest yoga tantra visualizations and practice. But it's okay to do these. It's okay to do these. We've done them in many, and they're done in Discovering Buddhism courses. It plants a seed in your mind. And these are visions, inner visions that happen for you. Actually, now they happen every night when you fall asleep, because your mind goes from a grosser state to a more subtle state. They happen in reverse when you're waking up, when you're coming into consciousness. They happen if you happen to faint, happen in reverse as you are woken up from fainting. They happen with a giant yawn or sneeze, which are like mini deaths, they'd say. They happen when you have sexual orgasm. So these visions are happening. And if you're not recognizing them now, it's simply because you're not familiar. How do we familiarize with them? We do them in meditation. And that's why they come up in every tantric sadhana, like that, to familiarize yourself. So if you have a commitment, a life commitment from having taken a certain empowerment of a certain deity, and you have a commitment to possibly do a long or short sadhana every day of that deity. Sadhana or sadhana is a method of accomplishment. It's a type of meditation practice, could be contained in a booklet, and you follow that booklet along. And usually in those practices will be the visions that you're trying to do at some point. And that's why they're in there, to familiarize yourself, to get your mind familiar. So just sit comfortably. Slowly close your eyes and allow your respiration to deepen. And as you're doing that, every time you exhale, release any tension you find you're holding in your body. Bring in a deep, slow inhalation, bringing space into the mind, into the body. and a slow, deep exhalation. On your next exhalation, I'd like you to close off your right nostril, exhaling deeply through the left. As you inhale, close off the left nostril, inhale deeply through the right. Continue that 2 more times. Exhaling through the left nostril, clearing that left channel, inhaling deeply through the right. Now I'd like you to exhale deeply through the right nostril, clearing that right channel, subtle consciousness channel. Exhale through the left nostril, closing off the right. You can use your finger if you need to. Exhaling through the right nostril, inhaling through the left. Lastly, let's inhale through both nostrils. And imagine as you exhale through both nostrils, instead of it releasing out the nostrils, imagine it releases from your subtle side channels inside your body, running near the spine, right alongside the central channel. And their lower ends of those side channels enter the lower end of the central channel, 4 finger widths below your navel, as if you're bringing those winds into that central channel. So you're inhaling through both nostrils. The tops of those side channels comes all the way down, and those lower ends curl as you exhale into the central channel 3 times. Allow the mind to rest for a moment on the breath, just a normal, natural breath. So that was just a variation of the 9-round breathing that helps to clear out the subtle energy system a bit in your body. And just imagine briefly, without emotion, but just imagine briefly you have finished with this life now. Whatever age, perhaps old age, perhaps it's a sickness. Imagine you're lying comfortably on a bed. All the external elements are gone. You no longer see them or hear them or are disturbed by any of them. Simply you and your mind. And imagine the earth element of your body is dissolving, because our body is based on the different elements of earth, water, fire, and wind. The earth element that supports our structure, allows us to walk, grounds us. So our body may feel very heavy and unable to move. It's very normal as the earth element dissolves. It's an absolutely normal process you have been through countless times. What arises to your mind is a mirage-like image, like a shimmering vision looking out at a hot highway. Shimmering waves of water. This is not separate from you, though. This is your mind. This is your entire experience. As much as you can, merge yourself with that vision of the mirage, as if water is all around you. And just think, I am not going to miss the clear light. These visions will culminate in the clear light, and I don't want to miss that opportunity. But right now, focus your concentration on a mirage-like image. The water element of your body begins to dissolve. All the fluids are drying up in your body. You may feel very dry, very thirsty, and what appears to your mind is a smoke-like image, like you're in a room filled with blue-gray smoke, and that's all there is. This is merged with your consciousness. It's not separate from you. As best as you can, focus on that image, the smoke-filled room. In the back of your mind, think, I'm not going to miss the clear light. I'm not going to miss the clear light. But remain focused on the smoke-filled image. When you meditate on these images, if you ever take tantric initiation and you do these in your daily practices, do them slowly, as slowly as you have time for. Make the time for them. The water dissolves into fire, and the fire element begins dissolving. And this is when digestion ceases for the dying person. So these are the levels of gross consciousness absorbing. Heat is moving from the body, from the extremities into the heart center. And what appears to your mind is fireflies in the night sky, or as if you're at a bonfire, a large campfire, and somebody puts a blanket over it and sparks go up into the sky. Spark-filled image is all that appears to your consciousness right now. as you think, I'm not going to miss the clear light. These are the reminders, these visions, that the clear light is coming, and I don't want to miss it because it's an opportunity to meditate on emptiness. So focus now on the spark-filled sky. The air element begins dissolving, and this is usually when the last exhalation happens for the dying person, if it hasn't already happened. So some visions can happen prior. Usually the breathing stops. What appears to the consciousness is a glow around a candle that's about to go out. That flickering candle that's about to extinguish, there's a glow around it, and that's your entire experience. Not separate from your mind, as we determine not to miss the clear light. And then the subtle consciousness begins absorbing. And there first arises like a harvest moon rising. Huge moon on the horizon rising. So this milky white of the moon over an empty field is your entire experience, not separate from your mind. Focus on that as best as you can. Then there is what's called a red increase. So there's first the white appearance of the harvest moon, the milky moon, and then a red increase. Sunset, I would call it, brilliant sunset. That magenta orange blazing sun across the sky is your entire experience. And the reason for these colors are what's happening in the subtle energy system within your body as the subtle consciousness absorbs. So focusing now on just the brilliant magenta orange sunset. It's your whole experience. And think that clear light is coming soon. I'm not going to miss it. So while your body is now done, there's a whole lot still going on with your subtle consciousness that's still, for the time being, residing in the gross body. And the next vision is called the black near attainment, because you nearly attained, you're nearly at the clear light. It's as black can be, like a dead faint. It's not separate from your mind. It's your whole experience. Sometimes they say brilliant black. Imagine that it's so black, it's brilliant. And the clear light dawns. So we don't really know what that luminescence is like. I've heard it also described as utter transparency. So what it really is non-duality. But we have no experience of that, because there's always us and then some object. There's always subjective mind and some objective thing we're dealing with, we're experiencing. So imagine no separation between subject and object. That transparency, that utter luminescent clarity. Whatever you can imagine is that. Focus on that right now. And it's in this space, if you notice a strong sense of yourself arise, and you have some understanding of how to meditate on emptiness, then you want to meditate on the emptiness now. How does that I exist? Can we mute our microphones, please? How does that I exist? Because that concrete experience of I, of me, with emptiness, it doesn't exist at all. There's no inherently existent I at all. It's a complete hallucination. Just let go for a moment. Let go the concepts, let go the bubbles of thoughts, and just be for a moment. So on one level, this is who we really are. So the more you can familiarize your mind with these kind of visions, the more you can study and meditate on emptiness, you won't have any problem when you're dying. May any benefit from doing this meditation help us all to have peaceful deaths, and more importantly right now, meaningful lives to be of benefit to all living beings. So please relax, and slowly when you're ready, open your eyes. Any questions right now? Yes, Ed? Can you unmute?
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Amy. Amy, is the process the same if one is in a coma, if one is sedated, if one dies suddenly?
Yes, what I've heard is when you die suddenly, it happens more quickly. So the process still happens with everyone who dies, but it happens more quickly. The consciousness leaves more quickly, right? And in a coma, I don't really know. I would say it depends on what state of the coma. Was your body badly damaged, which can obstruct the winds? I mean, the winds will still leave, but they may do it in a different way and be kind of interrupted a little bit, depending on what you're in a coma from. If you're heavily sedated, what usually I've heard is recommended is to balance your sedation. Because if you're in a lot of pain and they give you a lot of morphine and the morphine dopes you up so you can't meditate, that's going to be a problem, because you're not going to be able to focus on the meditation, or you're going to be just unconsciously sleeping all the time. So it's up to you how you want to balance it if you have a lot of pain. But there are meditations that can help you deal with the pain. So it kind of shifts the pain a little bit so that you're somewhat able to do some meditation. And some dying people I've been with have wanted to do that. You know, give me a little bit, let me have a little less morphine because I want to be conscious. So it's an individual decision you'd make. Karen, Nadine, you have a hand up, it looks like.
Well, that man's question reminded me that the reason we joined this class is because we want to die properly. So we're kind of looking for a group of people that would honor the way we want to die. So that's kind of why we're here, and I'm glad we did that meditation, and I'm glad you explained the morphine, because I don't want any morphine when I die. But you know how your family kind of freaks out and they're gonna decide what's best for you. So I kind of wanted to be around people who would support that. So thank you for that meditation. That was so cool. And the second thing I wanted to ask was, when the moon rose, is it an attachment that I felt happy? And then I felt happy, and you went through the rest of the meditation, and then I had a little headache. And then I realized my face was tight because I was smiling. So I relaxed that and the headache went away, but without my body, excuse me, without my body, I won't have a head, so I won't have a headache. So is that happiness okay, but as long as I don't smile, when I'm alive?
Yeah, I mean, I don't pay too much attention to my body in the meditation. It's more of an internal experience that I'm trying to manifest. So again, when we start meditating, it's really helpful to have your body as relaxed as possible. And, moon rises and sunsets are And some people call the sun aspect sunrise, but years ago, I was sitting with Rinpoche and I had a question about this meditation, and we were I'll never forget, it was so strong for me. We were in Bodh Gaya, and in those days, there wasn't a lot of development. This is where the Buddha got enlightened in Eastern India. You must go visit, make a pilgrimage there if you have not. It's very special. Sandy and I were there together. Sandy's here, Southern California, with Irv. And so I was with Rinpoche in this the only decent rooms they had at the time at the Japanese temple where they were housing Rinpoche. And I had an appointment and it was sunset. And there's a giant Buddha statue at the Japanese temple. And our center there wasn't developed very much at the time. And so we were discussing it, and then the sun was setting, this brilliant blaze of orange red sunset right out the window. And then Rinpoche turned and then he said, that vision, the red increase. And he said, it's like this. It's like this. He said, he pointed. And it made such an imprint on me. So now that's easy for me to visualize if I do the visions. So you don't want to get too hooked in I'm happy to see the moonrise. It's more, my mind is the moonrise. Like that's my entire experience, if that's helpful. And then the other thing is, you say you don't want to have morphine. It can be a little different if you are completely gripped in pain. And that's, the pain alone is destroying any ability to meditate, to keep the balance. But if you really want to be surrounded by people that know your practice or that you want them to do certain things, put it down in writing now. Don't wait, and make it legal, get it notarized, whatever you need to do, put all your instructions down, because you don't know where you're going to be, who you're going to be with. The people around you may know nothing, and they may be confused and they may want to help, but they don't know what to do, and they may be doing and saying the wrong things. So that way it's really clear, and there's no guesswork, and they can get the right people there. You can have the people that you want. Like I have like my brother as, executor, but that's different. But he and my alternate executor have the three spiritual people they call, because they don't know what to do. They're not Buddhists, so they would know nothing. And they're going to call these people that have agreed to, right now where I'm located, to fly in, and they know what to do. And then one of the executors has all my spiritual practices written down, the hard copies, and has the memory stick with them all on it, with me chanting them all. So they just have to plug me in and I'm set. They don't have to kind of be like, what do we do? So do it and back it up in your computer, have it places where it's really clear, have it all done. And then you don't really need to worry. Chances are I won't be anywhere near that stuff when I die, right? But at least it's ready. At least I have one copy ready if I'm here, and so my mind is a little unfettered. I don't have to be, because a couple times they've asked me, what do you want? We don't know. And, I don't want them to bury me. So they need to know stuff like that. That's helpful, like that. So does that make sense? Is it Karen?
Yeah, yes, it does. And I'm this is Nadine. Hi.
Nadine.
Great. Yeah, and I hope that helps everyone.
Where do you
Personally,
live?
I have had severe. I live in Southern California, so I was just gonna try
So
to
you're in
text
Southern
Sandy and
California.
Irv there.
I was going to say
But,
that there's a center, and Sandy would know. There's Tupten Darjeeling. Sandy, is that right? Tupten Darjeeling is in Long Beach, and I also have some friends that teach. I
Oh
think,
wow,
in
we're close.
California. Yeah, Francis and Jean's. They're somewhere in Southern California. They sometimes teach. Some beautiful people, beautiful couple that's in retreat, and they teach from time to time. But you can go online and find what's available in Southern California. Sometimes it's helpful to be near a center like that. I mean, with Zoom, you can go anywhere, but sometimes it's nice once centers open again to connect with some people, with the community there, if you can.
Yeah, personally, I have meditated out of some severe pain. I know I don't need morphine.
Okay.
If I relax enough, then the pain goes away.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Okay. So there's just a few paragraphs of still relative truth, and I'll talk a little bit about ultimate truth. How do we transform the mind with ultimate? How do we accept suffering with ultimate truth? And this just to conclude this one part about relative truth. Learned people perceive that all happiness and suffering depend upon the mind. We've been talking about this. So they search for happiness from the mind itself. The causes of happiness are complete within yourself. They're not dependent upon externals. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't it easier when you think about that? You know, look at our planet. Everything is external. And there's people I know that I actually kind of counsel and meet with that, you know, they're still looking for happiness outside of themselves. Some of them are Buddhist, some of them are not Buddhist. And it's so, you know, challenging in a way where, you know, you have to be friends with yourself and be comfortable with yourself. It's certainly a challenging process. It can be to make that friendship with yourself, but you don't need so much else. You know, it's not all this glomming of this. And once I have this, and once I have this relationship, and once I get that job, and once I move to that apartment and have this much money, and I mean, it's endless. It's endless. It will never end like that. But when you're comfortable with yourself, when you know who you are, and you're working on the things that aren't so great about yourself, which we all have, right? And I'm friends with those things as well. It's okay, but I'm working on it. And the things that are really good about me, I celebrate and I appreciate in a balanced way, right? So again, there's nothing to be hurt by, any afflictions from beings or non-beings if you're comfortable with yourself. The same that one will not be hurt by suffering will be true at the time of dying. When fear and suffering arise, you'll always be free, the text says. The Bodhisattva's samadhi of pervading all elements by happiness is also accomplished by this means. That's one of the Bodhisattva levels like that they talk about. So once you've kind of merged your mind with this, where I am content with myself, your death will be peaceful and you can reach these Bodhisattva levels. Otherwise, it says foolish people run after external objects, thinking they're thereby to seek happiness. Whatever happiness, great or small, they try to gain, they'll have many failures, many non-attainments, you know, disillusionment we have, like that, misjudgments. Okay, for as people say, control is in the hands of others, your hair's tangled in a tree. That's what it's like. If you feel that control of your mind's in the hands of others, really? So enemies separated from happiness by a little criticism, okay, think about it. And one state of mind will always be unreliable, right? However much it nurtures it, it will be impossible. So it says like the crow nursing the cuckoo. However much the crow nurses the cuckoo, okay, it will be impossible for the cuckoo to become a baby crow. There's nothing that is not tiresome for the gods, miserable spirits, and suffering for oneself. Okay, so this essential advice is the confluence of 100 different points. Okay, there's many other ways of acceptance of the suffering of hardships while practicing the path. But here he's talking in this text, he says, I'm writing an easily understandable outline of the acceptance of suffering based on the teachings of Shantideva and his learned followers. Ultimate truth, okay? You're taking suffering as the path for happiness of the ultimate truth to transform my mind, using it. Okay, this is drawing of the mind to supreme peace and dwelling there by the knowledge, stopping the arising of the four extremes, dwelling in the empty nature in which there's no suffering or unfavorable circumstances, in which the names of suffering, for instance, cannot be found. For instance, okay, so with emptiness, that's ultimate truth. We talked about conventional truth, relative truth. You know, I am sitting here teaching like that. I am talking, you are sitting there listening, and you are sitting there. So you need to take care of yourself. It's not that one extreme is nothing exists. Okay, that's false. That's an extreme. It doesn't exist like that. Okay, another extreme that we often live by is everything exists concretely. Everything exists inherently. That's also a mistake. Okay, those are two extremes. We want to bring focus into the middle way. Okay, I do exist, but how do I exist? Based on causes and conditions that caused me to come into being. For instance, my parents wanted to have another child. My grandparents had them. These are causes and conditions of my being here. Okay. Another way that I come into being, that I arise dependently on, I'm a dependent arising. I arise dependent on my parts. I depend on my parts. What are my parts? What are your parts? Body and mind. Body and mind, what they call the 5 aggregates. A collection. An aggregate's a collection. 5 aggregates, 4 mental aggregates, and 1 form aggregate, your body. Okay, so your body and mind basically is what I depend on. Okay, and I could even say there's other parts to me, whether it's arms and legs, cells, bones, skin, organs. And that's part of my body. And what my mind is based on are all my thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, moments of consciousness, moments of mind. One causing the next, causing the next, causing the next. So I'm based on that as well, parts, my parts. According to the highest school, Prasangika Madhyamaka in Tibetan Buddhism, what I also depend on, I arise dependently on my mind labeling on a valid basis of designation, For instance, when I was born in a hospital. And when I came out in the delivery room, if Amy always existed for all time, right? And a baby girl came out, but Amy existed for all time as the way we feel we exist, concretely, inherently, everyone in the delivery room would say, it's Amy. But what came out was baby girl. And you could go into other labels on that configuration of a little human, a little pink fleshy head with a little body and 4 appendages. And you could continue to label white, fleshy, baby, human, American, like that, and then my parents placed the name Amy, and then Amy came into existence, arising dependently, dependent arising, okay? Because I'm empty, I lack, there's an absence of inherent nature, And I'll give you synonyms for inherent nature: concrete existence, intrinsic value, existing from its own side, existing with its own nature, permanently existing, independently existing. They're all synonyms for inherent nature, which is very hard for us to conceive of. Reification is what I'll say the way we tend to walk around the planet. Another word for concretization. We reify everything. We make it solid, concrete, permanent, always going to be there. We don't exist like that at all. It's a complete hallucination, complete mistaken consciousness. Why is it like that? Simply because we have moments of that confusion and ignorance in our mind. Why is that there? Because of previous moments of it. And I'll call it misknowing, capital K-N-O-W, misknowing. We misknow the truth. So when we have ultimate truth, there's no suffering at all, is a way to look at suffering. The suffering doesn't exist at all the way it's appearing to us. Nothing does. Any questions about that? That was just your crash course in emptiness. Okay. But with emptiness, and this is a very profound part of our philosophy, it's the crux, it's the end of all your suffering. Okay. 84,000 teachings the Buddha gave, 84,000 discourses in a 40-year period, roughly. Okay. 84,000. You're like, huh? That's pretty extraordinary. Sutras, 84,000 of those. Okay. All of them really designed, seriously, to get us to realize emptiness. And you might say, well, there were Hinayana discourses. Yes, the Hinayana's designed to move us into the Mahayana. Okay. The Mahayana is designed to get us into the Tantrayana, Vajrayana. Tantric practice is the quickest path. All designed to get us to realize emptiness. That's what cuts the root of your suffering. Absolutely. So what you want to do is, if this is new for you, don't freak out. Again, don't say you don't exist. You do exist. You're sitting here. You need to participate in your karma and take care of yourself. You can't step in front of the bus. Bus doesn't exist. It's empty. It'll kill you. Like that. So what we want to do is we want to start reading some of the parts of the thinner, smaller beginning Lam Rim books. Read the emptiness section till you really understand it. Then go to a more in-depth book. You might want to start with Essence of Nectar, maybe Path to Bliss. Simpler to understand, those two books. Okay. Then you might want to pick up Liberation in the Palm of Your Hands, or maybe The Essence of Refined Gold. Just read the emptiness section there. But it's nice to familiarize yourself and meditate on analytically all the topics of the Lam Rim. They build up to get you to understand emptiness. It all fits together really well, like that. And death and impermanence is part of those topics. And then you want to understand those thinner books. You want to get to some classes on emptiness, maybe some retreats, short retreats on emptiness, and learn how to effectively meditate on emptiness. And then you want to do that as much as possible, an hour a day. You need to soak your mind in it, right? To really understand, to transform the mind in that way, to start thinking in that way. So somebody bumps up to you in the supermarket, bumps into you. But with emptiness meditation, it's like you're fluid. You're fluid. It doesn't mean you don't set limits with people and you don't call people out in the face of social injustice. It doesn't mean you don't do that with emptiness. I don't know. It doesn't mean it doesn't matter with emptiness. Okay, it very much matters. Everything is interconnected with emptiness. Everything is relational and interdependent. And I love what Thich Nhat Hanh would say, we are interbeings. We're interbeings. We feel like we're independent beings. Good luck with that. You know, how would you feed yourself as an independent being? Think of what we rely on to get our food, just that alone. For your electricity, you're not doing this all on your own in a little pocket, some little bubble. Where do you get your electricity from? Where do you get heat for your house or air conditioning? Or where do you get your clothes? Yourself? You made them? You grew cotton? No, we're totally interrelated. We're totally interrelated. Everything. We depend on so much, so many beings to bring us here like that, to make our world happen. Always. So we're interbeings. Everything's interrelated. So somebody bumps into you in the supermarket. Hey, they didn't mean to, whatever. Or maybe they did mean to. Then you want to give them some space. Move out of the room. Maybe they're angry. They had a bad day. Let's consider that ripple bumped up against me. It was unpleasant. I might note that was unpleasant. It's okay, right? But I'm not going to react. I don't have to react back. Okay. Emptiness helps you it dissolves the edges of the world, helps it dissolve the rough edges like that. And the practice continues to be with lojong, leaning into the sharp edges. There are going to be sharp edges in life. That's samsara. So when they show up, practice by leaning into it again, accepting the suffering, welcoming the suffering with this text. I'm welcoming the suffering. I'm leaning in. I'm going to get my message. I'm going to get my lesson there. I'm going to use that. Okay. Any additional questions, please?
Hi, Venerable Amy.
Well,
It's
well,
again.
if no one else has a question. Oh, go ahead, Patty.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Is the clear light meditation similar to what I've heard that non-conceptual awareness? Is that a different
think
kind of meditation?
I think it could be similar to that. You know, when you're doing the visions, that's a kind of separate meditation unto itself, you know, just doing the visions. But when you're trying to stay in the clear light, normally you're usually doing more of an emptiness meditation if you can recall that. But I would think, and what did you just say again? The non-conceptual
Non-conceptual awareness.
I think it's somewhat similar, but you want to be careful because when you get to the word awareness, the mind has two qualities, as we know, clarity and awareness. So when you're doing meditations on the nature of mind, which is not emptiness meditation, because the nature of mind is an affirmative. It's an affirmative space-like quality. Now they will say space-like emptiness, okay? But that's different. It's really about that absence. And sometimes you do feel a space-like quality to it, but it's a negation. It's an absence, a not finding something. So you want to be very careful if it's a slightly different, I would say, than just non-conceptual awareness. Almost like maybe you're talking a little bit more like Rigpa. Are you familiar with that term? Okay, because that sometimes it reminds me of that. So you just want to be careful that you're not talking about, you have to be very specific what you mean by non-conceptual awareness, because the mind, nature, meditation on the nature of mind is not emptiness meditation, but it's very nice meditation as well. That's very helpful to do.
Thank you.
Sure. Somebody else had a question, I thought.
Yeah, if no one else has a question, I do. I just wanted to give other people a chance to ask first.
Sure.
But we do read the Lamrim. It's Karen and Nadine again.
Oh yes, great.
You know, we've read the 3 books of the Lamrim by Lama Tsongkhapa probably 3 times through now, 2 times, 3 times through now. And as I understand the aggregates, like I've studied also Ayurveda, and as I understood the aggregates, I would like some clarification. You said there were 4 of the body and 1 of the mind, but
Okay, there's
I
4.
thought the
4 of
5
the
there were
mind.
5 elements.
There's 4 of the mind and 1 of the
4 of
body.
the mind, yeah.
4 of the mind
So
and
now
1
I'm
of the body.
confused, yeah.
So the form element is your body.
Okay.
The mind is then feeling,
Okay.
discriminatory awareness,
Oh, this.
consciousness, and compositional factors. So let me give you a little bit more. Okay, feelings, the aggregate of feeling of the mind, and they're usually in that order, or sometimes they're a little bit reversed. Feeling is not emotions. It's simply pain, pleasure, or neutral feelings. When you want to think about how your mind engages
Nervous
with
system.
things. Okay, so you've got
Okay.
pain, pleasure, or neutral feeling. That's how we first engage with something. Like we come in and there's either pain, pleasure, or neutral. Okay. Next aggregate, discriminatory awareness. You know, you're further discriminating. Okay, I'm feeling pain from this thing. Now, what is it? What exactly is it? And I'm going to be moving away from it. Or this thing I really like. There seems to be pleasure there. I gravitate there. I want more of that. What's happening with that? And you're discerning a little bit more in discriminatory awareness. Consciousness is the moments of mind. One causing the next, causing the next, causing the next, like a spacious luminosity of the mind, also you could say. Compositional factors, the 4th aggregate, is everything that's left over, that's not in the other 3, which are things like love, hate, memory, things like that. Those are the 4 aggregates of the mind.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Cynthia?
Yeah, hi there, Amy. I was wondering with the practice of meditation that we just did, whether is there something that we could practice that would, where we would see some progress in our death and dying meditation with our sleep? Like, would we see that in in our regular sleep where we start to be more conscious? I was wondering if you had any.
Well, I'll put it this way. You really have to keep at it, and everybody has different karma. So you don't know kind of where you are on the path. I mean, you sometimes have a sense of your mind, of course, but for years I've been trying to catch it as I fall asleep. Like, as I'm like, there's that moment where you're drifting off into unconsciousness, and I'm trying to, notice the visions. It's difficult. It's difficult to see if they'll come up. So I just keep working on it. But the other thing is there's a subtle energy system in your body that you're often using, and you have permission to use, usually after tantric empowerment, and also with certain completion stage instructions. This is higher levels. If you get those instructions, and this is kind of an incentive to want to take a tantric empowerment one day, but you have to keep your vows. You take tantric vows. You can't learn them in advance. You need to keep them well. Everything's designed to get you enlightened. So that's what really vows are about. It's not about necessarily restriction. It's if you keep them well, you automatically get enlightened, right? That's how they're designed. So through that process, if you're working with that subtle energy system, and you're able, and the more tense you are, all that subtle energy system knots up and blocks. The more relaxed you are and the more meditation on emptiness you do, and the less delusion you have in your mind, all of that subtle energy system relaxes and opens up, and you're much better able to use it. It's very supple. So when you're doing those meditations with the subtle energy system, and if you're able to bring the winds into the central channel, which is really the point of these exercises, those internal visions of the death process can arise automatically in your mind to the clear light. That's what's exciting about it. It's not, and it's also, as a byproduct, it's extremely blissful. But your mind is, and also you want to have the focus of Shine, concentration, right? Very much to focus on that. And it's actually apparently a bit easier to maximize your Shine, to really attain Shine by using those deeper internal practices with the subtle energy system, if that's helpful. So we just keep working on it, right, Cynthia? You do your best.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. So one thing I want to clarify tonight that we haven't had a lot of time to go through is we started talking about the 9-point death meditation. And I got through the first 3 points. I mentioned this 3 headings, 3 reasonings under every root or heading, and 3 resolutions. So that first root we've discussed was death is certain. And the 3 points under it is there's no power in the universe that will stop death from coming to you. The second point is our time is quickly running out. Every moment we're closer to death, and you can do some meditation on everything's ticking away. We're another Tuesday closer to death. We're another spring closer. We're another March closer. And you go over and over, you spend your day a little bit, you're walking, I'm another step closer to death. I'm another step closer. You just, each thing, I'm another lunch closer to death. I'm another sip of water closer. You really try to keep it heightened, but you can meditate deeply on that. The third point is there's very little time to practice Dharma. And this leads you to the resolution that not only that I have to practice. Okay. Second main heading is the time of death is uncertain. Okay, this is harder to realize because we know we're going to die. I think a lot of us get that. But we often think it's going to be when we're old in our sleep. Well, that's what we'd like. And we even language it that way. We say, oh, when I'm old, you don't know if you're going to live to be old. You don't know, right? So I've changed my language to say, if I live to be old, then I want to do that. Or I hope we can do that, right? Because we don't know. So this has three reasonings under it. The first is that we happen to live on a planet with an unfixed lifespan. Unfixed lifespan. That's planet Earth. We know people die at any age. Second point, and the third points are somewhat related, but the second point is there's many more things contributing to our death than keeping us alive. You wouldn't believe, okay? We've got environmental toxins, natural disasters, car, plane, every kind of accident you can imagine. We have pandemics, right? We have even food can be tainted, cause food poisoning, and you can die. Sometimes people go into surgery for something minor and they end up dying on the table, right? So there's all these reasons, there's all these diseases, bacterias, viruses, as we know, variants of them. Unbelievable, you know, and Tibetan Buddhism even gets into spirits and things like that, but there's just innumerable ways, things that are, you know, fostering your death. Believe it. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just saying it's one thing to think about. Okay. And the third reasoning under we don't know when we're going to die is the body's really delicate. It's not an earthquake that kills you. It's the building that falls down on your head. The car accident, the materials of the car and the velocity of the speed of the car, when it hits something is stronger than the flesh and bones and blood and materials you have of your body. And that's why people die in car accidents, depending on how fast they're going and what they hit and how they're hit. Things like that. So, you know, again, body's very delicate. So somebody gets food poisoning and they die. We've seen with COVID, young, healthy people died of COVID. Unbelievable. You know, virus gets into you. You don't know. You have no idea how you're going to respond like that. So many things contributing to our death. Body's very delicate. Creates a resolution from these 3 points, and we'll go through the last 3 points next time. These 3 points, not only am I going to practice, I will practice now. So some of you have been talking about you're going to get your practice together during the pandemic. You're going to get the altar set up. You're going to find the sitting space. You're going to get the cushion. Do it now. Don't wait anymore. You know, get to the practice that you kept saying you're putting off. Do it now. No more time to waste. Okay? So we're going to stop there. And thank you so much for joining. It's lovely seeing all of you. And I'd like to dedicate the merit right now. And I'm going to share my screen and bring up some of Rinpoche's dedication prayers for the pandemic time. And if we could read some of these together. So feel free if you'd like to join in. Can you see it on the screen? Let me know if you can't see it. So I'd like to take whatever positive energy we have created from this evening together. I'd like to roll it into our practices so we can get enlightened quickly for the benefit of all living beings, and definitely for all of us to have peaceful deaths without any regrets at all, and for all the beings who are sick with COVID to heal instantly and not have any long-term effects. And for those who have recently died of COVID or something else, like my dear friend Oa in Santa Cruz, Peter Kay in Vermont, Carol Hansen in Oklahoma, and Robin Brentano and Bill Kelly, their friends, have COVID right now. I think in the New York area. They're connected to the Shantideva community. I'd really like for them to be healed. And anyone else who's recently passed away, may they immediately take a good rebirth to get enlightened quickly to benefit all. Janju Sencho Rinpoche, Ma ke panam ke gyurchig, ke panyam pa me pa yi, gone gondu pelwar shon. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sicknesses. May all the sicknesses without exception of transmigratory beings never occur again. In all my lives never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. By the force of the victorious one, Tsongkhapa, acting as our direct Maya and a virtuous friend in all our lives, may we never turn away for even a second from the pure path highly admired by the victorious ones. Like the earth, water, fire, and wind, medicines and monastery firewood, may I always be enjoyed by all sentient beings as they like and without resistance. May I cherish all sentient beings like my own life. May I cherish them much more than myself. May all their negative karma ripen on me. May all my virtue ripen on them. And let's do this emptiness one. And Rinpoche says it's most important due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas, the numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side. May I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. Any understanding you have of emptiness, just reflect for a moment. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. And the long life prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. To the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. For Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Thank you so much for your attention this evening. I'll just put again, I think most of you know my website. I'll just put the website there. There's a bunch more teachings getting added, different things that I'm doing into the summer. And I wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you,
Please be
Venerable.
well and
Thank
happy
you.
spring.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you, Venerable.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. May you live long too.
Thank you.